Penguin Moderns number 5, Akutagawa and Others, 3 Japanese short stories. How much fun are you getting out of life? The back of this reads, 3 beguiling, strange, funny, and hair-raising tales of imprisonment, memory, and atrocity from early 20th century Japan. So as the title states, these are 3 short stories available in Penguin Moderns. Now 2 of these are available in the Penguin Book of Japanese Short Stories, and I actually have to say that that's been on my radar. I've been wanting to buy that one for a while, especially because I really like the cover art. And the third story is represented in Akutagawa in Penguin Modern Classics, Rashomon, and 17 Other Stories. So since there are 3 different authors, I'm going to break this down into 3 sections. So the first short story is called Behind the Prison by Nagai Kafu. Nagai Kafu was born in Tokyo in 1879 and he died in Ichikawa in 1959. A little bit about Nagai Kafu. So in his work, he's noted for showing the demi-monde. I knew that demi-monde meant the half-world, but I didn't know exactly what they meant. I thought it meant underworld, but it's actually a little bit deeper than that. So the demi-monde is basically elite men who visit prostitutes or take care of women as mistresses. And so Nagai Kafu was noted for showing this demi-monde in early 20th century Tokyo. Now, Behind the Prison is the longest story in this set. It is 25 of the 50 pages, so one short story takes up half of this volume. And it's interesting because this is a story of a person who has lived overseas, and he comes back to Japan and he just feels stifled. He doesn't fit in with the Japanese society. He seems to come from at least an upper class or a little bit wealthy background. And his father had sent him overseas so that he possibly would learn a trade or enhance his trade by learning other languages. But when he gets back, he refuses to work, and his father just puts him on this cottage in the back of their estate, which is behind a prison. This short story is interesting because of the themes that it has. So let me go ahead and read you this quote, which is going to show the fixation on nature, which is actually in a lot of Japanese short stories, and also one of the major themes of the story. In a foreign country, so long as one's health is unimpaired, one need have no fear of starving. One can abandon all concern for reputation and answer newspaper advertisements to become a waiter, a shop assistant, anything at all. Without the hypocritical label of gentleman, one no longer feels the shameful need to deceive others. One gains opportunities to observe the hidden truths of society and to touch the genuine tears of life. Oh, but once one has returned to the land of one's birth, there is no place more constricting. So this fellow felt very free being in another country because he didn't have to live up to the standards of his class. He could join the lower class or the working class, and he could observe people. But back in his own country, he's very constricted, and he can't do that. He has to stick to what his class makes of him. I turned to my father and said, "There is nothing for me to do in this world. Please think of me as mad or crippled, and do not press me to live up to normal worldly expectations." So the father responds, "Fortunately, we have a spare room," he said, "and food. You can just live here quietly and keep to yourself," because at this point the father is resigned that his child is going to be not worth much. In keeping with the theme of the story, he always thinks that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. He longs to be somewhere where he's not. He thinks, no matter what I see, even the most beautiful flower, I wonder if it is blooming only to make us think of the sadness to come when it has withered and died. The delightful intoxication of love, I can only believe, exists to give us a taste of the sadness to come after parting. And surely the autumn sunlight shines this beautifully in order to tell us, know ye that the sadness of winter will be here tomorrow. So not only does this character long for something he had in the past, but he can't focus on the present. Everything in the present is just a sign of things that he will lose for the future. So he can't enjoy it in the moment. Now, since he lives behind a prison and there's a focus on nature, I thought this quote was really interesting because it mixes this idea of a prison, which is kind of how he feels, like he feels trapped, and nature. The trees stand some distance away from one another, which to my eyes suggests that even these unfeeling plants are being kept apart in the prison yard to prevent them from whispering together, plotting evil schemes under cover of darkness. Of course, this person is very observant of what's going on around him, and he makes some interesting observations, commenting on the lower class people that he encounters. The family's mouths were formed for only two purposes: to eat food and to complain endlessly about the hardships of life. All in all, this was a really interesting story. I did think that it lacked a kind of wow factor, but as a descriptive piece of writing, it was interesting. It's also a kind of character study with a lot of nature and themes thrown in. The second story is called Closet LLB by Uno Koji. Now, Uno Koji is a writer who had a few stages in his career, and he was a social activist. He was born in 1891 in Fukuoka, and he died in 1961 in Tokyo. So this story is another character study about a child who is given what he needs to succeed in life, but he doesn't want that. He just wants to be lazy. And even though he's been trained to be a lawyer, he won't go out and try to get a job. He severs all ties with his family, and he sponges off of people. In fact, when he needs to help his mother, he gets tired of sending her a little bit of a pittance so that she has to fall on the mercy of other relatives. And once that happens, he's glad that he no longer has the burden of even sending her just a little bit of money. Before he knew it, then, his payments to his mother fell further and further behind. Once that happened, it ceased to bother him, and he gradually stopped sending anything at all. In the end, he could toss her urgent letters aside with hardly a twinge of conscience. If this character is not a pleasant person, this character study of him is interesting, but in the end, it's also a little bit unsatisfying. It needed something a little bit more to make this story really stand out. Now, the third story is the shortest one. It's only a few pages, but it's by the most famous of the authors, and that is Akutagawa Ryunosuke. It's called General Kim. Akutagawa Ryunosuke was born in 1892 Tokyo and died in 1927. He was very young. He was in his early 30s when he committed suicide by an overdose of pills. He is considered the father of the Japanese short story, and Japan's premier literary award is named after him. This story was the most confusing of the three. Actually, I didn't follow it too well. I think the reason for that is there was a lot of cultural references. There are two major military figures, and I think that these people are known well in Japan, and they go on an exploit undercover, and then they go to Korea. They see a child and they don't kill the child, although they are mean to him. And then later when they go back, like 30 years later, the child is grown and there's a war, and it becomes very surreal and supernatural. I just really didn't follow it, and to be honest, I didn't care. I didn't particularly like this short story, although it's certainly not bad. It just wasn't in my taste. This is a criticism I'm going to make about this volume. I think they could have chosen a much better short story from this author, but I think because of space constrictions, they try to keep this between 50 to 55 pages each. They chose a much shorter story. I think that goes for all three texts in this. Now, this was the first time in this series that I was underwhelmed. I know I had some negative comments about the Allen Ginsberg, but this one was just okay. It wasn't bad, but it was just okay. And I've actually read quite a few Japanese short stories and novels. I mean, I'm no expert, but these three were just kind of bland overall. Now, the first two did have great character studies, but they ended up kind of going nowhere. And the third one was just surreal, and that's not my kind of fiction that I generally like. So the next volume in this series is going to be Anais Nin's The Veiled Woman. As always, I want to thank all of you for the support. Any comments you have are greatly appreciated.